click the bell icon to never miss any update.
World War I was the first war that truly affected the whole world. It started in 1914 and ended in 1918. It was fought on the battlefields across the world between the Triple Entente, that's Great Britain, France and Russia, and a group of countries made up of Germany, Austria-Hungary and other powers like Bulgaria and the Ottoman Empire. As the war continued, other countries joined in on both sides, and the fighting did not just take place in the trenches of Europe, but also Africa, the Middle East and Asia. It became known as the Great War because it affected people all over the world and was the biggest war anyone had ever known. New weapons and technologies were used that enabled new ways of fighting, which caused destruction on a scale that had never been seen before. Millions of people, both soldiers and ordinary citizens, lost their lives as a result of the fighting. On 11th November 1918, the World War I came to an end. How did it come to an end? In April 1917, the US declared war on Germany. American troops went into action just over a year later on the side of the Triple Entente. Germany and its allies knew that they had to launch a big offensive if they were to win the war before too many US troops arrived, as they were a very powerful nation. The German soldiers attempted to push Britain and its allies back with a series of offensives or attacks. On 8 August 1918, the French and British armies launched the 100 Days Offensive, a counterattack which pushed the Germans back. By the end of August, there were around 1.4 million American troops in France, and Germany and its allies were completely overwhelmed. Not only that, but German citizens back home were suffering from food shortages and illness and started to rebel. There were strikes and demonstrations in the capital of Berlin. By the autumn of 1918, Germany and its allies realized it was no longer possible to win the war. Those fighting alongside Germany started to withdraw from the war, and by the start of November, Germany was fighting alone. The leaders of the German army told German government to end the fighting. The government asked the US for an armistice, an agreement to stop the fighting, and Germany's leader, Kaiser Wilhelm, left his job on 9th November 1918. 2 days later, Germany signed the armistice and the guns fell silent. The fighting stopped at 11 a.m. on the 11th day of the 11th month. After the war ended, across the UK there were huge parties in the streets such as Big Ben, which had been silenced during the war. But despite the celebrations, there was a deep sadness. No conflict before World War I had been so devastating. Most families in the UK had lost someone they loved. Millions of soldiers and ordinary citizens had lost their lives, and many more came home affected by injuries or mental trauma. After the war, Britain, France and the US wanted to ensure that there was peace for a long time. They met up and decided how they could do this, but Germany, Austria and Hungary were not invited. Once they made up their minds, they invited the other countries' leaders to meet them in Versailles in France, where they presented with the agreement called the Treaty of Versailles.